It's really a pleasure to be here and to see so many of you in the audience and to have a chance today to speak more about the spread of ASER-like assessments in other countries. Yesterday, I think it was really impressive to reflect on just how much ASER in India has achieved over 10 years to do an assessment across all of India. I think is perhaps the definition of the holy grail of scale. But really, if you look at the folks that are with me at the table today and at the map that is perhaps a bit obscured behind us, you see that ASER scale is even larger than just India. It's spread to 9 countries, 3 continents, and over 1 million children each year are tested with an assessment similar to ASER, a citizen-led, household-based assessment of reading and math. So with me today is a panel of individuals who have been part of this movement. They have helped to adapt the ASER type of assessment to their own countries. And today we're going to have a chance in this panel to hear a little more about what motivated them to start this type of assessment and where it has taken them in their context. I'm going to go ahead and just introduce the panelists as I pose the first round of questions for them. And I'm going to do my best in our tight time frame to leave time for all of you to ask questions of your own, so you can be thinking about those as we go. First, I want to start with Baela from ASER Pakistan. And yesterday you talked about how you decided to cross the border in 2006 and to hear more about what's been happening in India, which inspired you to start ASER Pakistan. And I'm hoping you can tell us a little more about what your motivation was in starting ASER Pakistan and where you've seen that effort take you over the past, I think it's been 7 years or more. So yeah, 8 years now.
Thank you, Dana, and again, a very good morning, and it's just wonderful being here with all of you here. It seems like a family, and Sarah said yesterday, and really, there's total empathy. It feels like we're just one. But I think any story about a journey has to begin at a very personal level because the context has to be there. And coming from a family which migrated from India in '47 and being born in Pakistan, there was always a yearning to be able to reconnect to what is seen naturally as a geography, from where you can find, you know, who you are, your identities, and so on. But beyond that, also in the family that I was brought up in, there was a whole story of resistance, being a member of trade unions, father being in and out of prisons, doing your own thing, being a rabble-rouser, essentially. So a rabble-rouser stuck in a Pakistan situation where the learning challenges are huge, where access challenges are huge. There was a constant yearning, you know, where are solutions? I had already been 20 years out of Pakistan. By the time I returned in '91, there was always a concern that, you know, where do we look for solutions? And things are not looking good in education. So in that, the South Asian region, for us, especially after 1971, the dismemberment of Pakistan with Bangladesh emerging, there was a need to look at the region and to find ways of reaching out, not just for healing, but also for learning, and to acknowledge that a lot exists in this region. So as I said yesterday, when in 2006 we'd invited Pratham and Rukmini in particular at that time to come to a regional conference, and she didn't show up. I said, you know, why didn't she come? And she said, I was busy with ASER. And I said, what's ASER? And the rest is history. But you know, but when I came here, everybody said, and I went back after Rajasthan, because that is where I went to understand ASER, I just was amazed at the simplicity of it. And I think yesterday, as was said, that, you know, you see the front end, some simplicity, there's a lot happening at the back end. But I think there was a challenge that I went back and shared with all my colleagues in Adara Talim Agahi, that, you know, and my other, you know, the extended coalition members as well in education, and they said, you know, you are such an Indophile. जो भी हिंदुस्तान में होता है सभी कुछ अच्छा लगता है आपको, तो ये भी अच्छा लग गया, हम नहीं मानते. So I said, okay, you don't believe in what's happening, how simple it is, how powerful it is, go see for yourselves. And I think being someone who comes from an inclusionary perspective, the idea was, let's send several members from several different organizations in Pakistan to go and look, check this out. It took them forever. They went in 2007 when the next round came. And then they came back and said, let's do pilots. And I know Radhav is sitting in front and how he hates pilots. So he said, you know, what is this? But you know, there was this thing, you know, itna zyada ikattha kaise karenge? You know, it's too much. So it took us to, in 2010, when this conversation kept going, and then Rukmini said, okay, we are crossing over, and I said, okay, you know, and we said, all right, we'll play your host. It was not a project. So it's very important to understand this was seen as a citizens' movement. We had thought about it, people had taken time, they had tried and sorted it out that I was just not being an Indophile. In fact, there was some reason for doing this. And so when we started, again, my feeling was, let's, you know, do it with lots of members in it. Where 55 people came, there were lots of organizations who took pledges, hum ye karenge, wo karenge, and the 7-member team that came from India, and many of them are still in front of me, they said, you know, it has to be done just so. There's a time, you have to adhere to the time aspect. You have to adhere to all its codes of conduct and some tools, core tools that you agree upon. And really the rest is up to you how you want to adapt, but please adhere to that. And that went to pieces when there were about 11 members. And we thought we should not be very autocratic and we should let democracy rule here in Pakistan. There's a great yearning for democracy. So after our first pilot, we realized when all the deadlines went to pieces that, you know, this is not on. So we took a coordinating role. But just very quickly sharing with you that, you know, in this period from 2008 to 2014, the 6-year period of effectively doing ASER, so much has happened, and each country has its own unique context and history. We've had the constant tension between Praetorian rules versus democratic yearnings, versus also what is seen as very central to being decentralized. So these tensions exist. But in the same period, we saw also in 2010 the 18th Amendment, which brought the right to education for 5 to 16-year-old children, and also total devolution of the education system to the provincial level with the elimination of the Ministry of Education. Can you imagine? Elimination of the Ministry of Education. 31st March 2011, the ministry was finished. People like us wrote and said this is ridiculous. And so we realized that our constituents were so varied. And we realized that the problem of education is still not going away. But it was great opportunity for us to convert the ASER undertaking from research or evidence collected by citizens to taking action with a whole range of people out there who could be potential partners of ASER, and also using the data to inform their actions. Whether it was citizens themselves or teacher unions or youth movements or parliamentarians, because back to back from 2008, we've had 2 democratically elected governments. So it was also the emergence of the parliamentarians. And we felt that, you know, this was going to be a big group. But also we were trying to challenge ourselves, how do we go beyond texts and tests mentality? So what has emerged from there is truly a huge social movement and a campaign. We're calling it the Citizens Movement for Quality Education. And ASER is actually now, therefore, sort of seen as creating an ecosystem of not just the ASER annual assessments that we do, but also to inform the right to education debate. And the action has led to actually the passing of enactments in 4 areas of Pakistan as a result of the ASER work, because we are reporting to 5 to 16. We have also started something very exciting called the Children's Literature Festival. We've had 15 in 3 years. We've also started a teacher empowerment program with teacher unions in public and private. as well as the Right to Education movement, which is now fueled by 500 education youth ambassadors. I'll just stop at that to share how the ASER story has been able to address many, many areas. And I'm not saying it is the solution to everything, but I'm just saying that it has become a great opportunity to mobilize a variety of people, but also the robustness of that data has meant that more and more believers use ASER, and almost everything begins with ASER on education in Pakistan. We think it's perhaps too much, but there it is.
Great. Thank you. Amazing to hear how much you've been able to mobilize and innovate around a simple idea. I'm going to move to Fatou, who is based in Senegal and works with Jangandoo. And there in Senegal, Jangandoo, the assessment that you conduct every year has really become a reference point for the movement towards quality education and therefore learning outcomes in Senegal. I'm hoping you can tell us a little more about how you and your partners, both at the local level and learning champions at the national level, have worked together to advance this quality agenda in Senegal.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be in this amazing event. ASER India has inspired all of us, so we're really happy to be attending here today. What Jangandoo has done is Jangandoo is working on a very participatory approach. So we're trying to include as many actors in the educational system, from parents to decision makers. So one example I can give today is our participation in the National Education Summit. National Education Summit in Senegal is a conference held during many days involving all authorities, all decision makers, all people working in the education sector, from parents to syndicates, ministries, Department of Education, NGOs that finance education, let's say all national actors that are involved in the education sectors. Jangandoo has been actively involved in this process. So because the coordinator has chaired himself the committee on governance, finality, and financing of education. And at the local level, our NGO partners that are implementing the survey in different regions in Senegal had themselves organized the local consultations in their respective regions. And one of the greatest results that we achieved, Jangandoo, is our key recommendations has been taken up for the conclusion of the National Education Summit. So the three key recommendations resulting from those consultations was: one, to promote assessment of children's learning based on educational research, university research. As we are a university organization, so we just find that it was an amazing success that these consultations finally end with a recommendation to promote more assessment based on university research. The second big recommendation made from this National Education Summit was to use the use of national languages in the learning contents. So Jangandoo has always been promoting the use of national language in the learning system. It was the second biggest conclusion of this National Education Summit. And the third one was the inclusion of sociocultural environment of children in learning contents too, because Jangandoo is holding a panel including institutional and cultural actors that really working on night and day to include like cultural environments of children in learning contents based on the success rate, the high success rate we have on general knowledge. So we've been finding that children are very responsive to their environment. So we've been standing for the children's environment to be part of learning contents. And this recommendation has been taken up by the Education Summit. So this participatory dialogue has been, we've achieved an amazing result with the participation of Jangandoo, and also our recommendations being taken up nationally by decision makers. Also, we doing targeted restitutions, like when the results came, we doing targeted, at the local level, all the partner NGOs that are organizing targeted restitutions, like in every region, the NGO that is conducting the survey is gathering all the local decision makers in their community to share the results for them to make sure that action is going to follow. So at the national level, when we launch in the report, we make sure that it's co-chaired or chaired by the Ministry of Education. So we're working in a very close partnership with governments and education decision makers. Also, in our change management component, we're working on two innovations. One is the remediations of reading and math, and these remediations are implemented and monitored by our partners. So it is another way for them to work closer to local decision, with local decision makers. But the biggest step we've done to really work with national decision makers and influence more the agenda is we've worked on a 6-page document called Indicators Policy Brief. We've done a roadmap for decision makers to have something on act. So in addition to results that we've on learning, children's learning, we work on a roadmap for decision makers to act. So actually at the national level, we have a document that we're sharing with all decision makers for them to have something to act on. Also, there is another strategy we're working on, is Jangandoo on demand. So Jangandoo is on demand, is offering to all local communities the possibility to do Jangandoo on their own communities. So whenever an authority or local authority want to conduct the survey in their own place, they come to us and we offer the model, we offer our tools, and we go and conduct the survey for us. So one or two communities, they already came to us and offered that they want to conduct Jangandoo in their own community. So Jangandoo is working really close relationship with local and national authorities. So in summary, what I can say is we really making steps and we really having a really big impact with local and national decision makers. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. Good again to sort of hear that theme of a broad coalition of folks who are able both at local and national level to really make some concrete changes in a short period. Crossing sort of the continent of Africa from West Africa to East Africa, I want to move to John, who has recently taken the helm of Uwezo, which is based in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. That's really a diverse set of countries, and back to Baela's point of the importance of history and context, I'm curious what you've seen across the region as the unique role of this type of citizen-led assessment and how Uwezo has been able to make a difference in the region of East Africa.
Thank you and good morning. Our history as Uwezo goes back to 2008. As Sarah mentioned yesterday, that has three, I think, background things. One is that we decided to go for a multi-country approach because East Africa was emerging then as a socio but also economic bloc. So we made a choice to come as Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania rather than just a single country, which we feel now has been a strategic choice because we are able to move now larger and make comparisons because these three countries have a shared history, have a lot of shared social networking, and so that rhymes very well with the political future of the three countries. At that time, we were facing a situation where there was acknowledgement that education was important, And there was actually concerted investments in universalizing primary education. That started in Uganda in 1997, came to Tanzania 2001, 2002, and ended in Kenya in 2003, where the governments decided to move now full blast and open the school space so that all children could participate. But then, of course, that context was the generosity of ASER inviting us here to India to come and see. Now, that history since 2008 has led us now to a situation where we found this tool, the simplicity of the assessment, is extremely compelling, but also noting that our governments really did not have any better option in terms of measuring the learning outcomes. And so we found we were able to establish very quick traction. And where we are now at the moment is a situation in which Uwezo, which is a Kiswahili word that means capability, is referred to. We are probably the most consulted non-government entity in matters of education. And so this very quick turnaround in terms of commanding attention has been driven, first of all, by the scale that is in Uwezo. We are able to go to all the districts in our 3 countries over the years, now moving to the 6th assessment in 2015. We are able to, again, move to a scale where we are using about 20,000 volunteers across the 3 countries. And so it is really scale that has led to conviction that what Uwezo is saying has to be listened to. But then also what was new in what we were producing and communicating was the fact that there was a lot of chest thumping from the ministries saying we have universalized education, see how enrollments have grown, come and see how the classrooms are flooded. But then no one had really questioned the fact that, as we saw yesterday from ASER's findings, that the private schools were gaining the share of the proportion of children attending primary schools because the quality was deteriorating. And so the nexus between access and quality, we found an opportunity in between that we have now been able to convince the parties involved that really it is not schooling that is important, but it is the value that accrues from schooling. There are 3 things I think that we may put our hands on at the moment where we are. First is that we can, in each of the 3 countries, be able to identify impacts at the national policy level. In Tanzania, for instance, giving a case 2 years ago in 2012, 2013, when the results of national examinations came out, it emerged that 60% of the candidates had failed. And so it led to a debate whether should we make the examination simpler so that more can pass, or what should we do? And so we were consulted, and of course it was certain that making things simpler would not help. But then looking at things again, whether we are teaching the right things at the right pace to the right people, national debates emerged. And so through that consultation, Twaweza and Uwezo were identified as strategic persons to work with by the government to make such certain strategic decisions. Again, when we look at the space of intervention, unlike Pratham, Uwezo did not have this huge base of conducting interventions to improve learning. And so there were always the questions. You are saying children are not learning, we have heard, so what are you saying we should do? And then, of course, debate emerged focusing on learning outcomes. And as we speak now, there are huge investments driven by East African donors, especially USAID and DFID, that have made remarkable investments to improve learning outcomes. And so the demand of measurement, even when we say that you cannot fatten a cow by measuring it, but then measurement really, as Abhijit was saying yesterday, is becoming even more important because more and more investments are coming into education. So how do we hold the people accountable? And so there is a new kind of wave of demand of our kind of work. And the last thing is that the simplicity of tools that are in Uwezo as compared to other assessments like EGRA, EGMA, and others has been very appealing to people in the intervention space. And so we can count probably tens of people in the intervention space who are now using the Uwezo tools to monitor learning, but also comparing with our district level and national level data to make certain decisions. So we would say that that visit in 2008 that Sarah and others came to see has not been in vain. We have made good traction, and I think we are looking forward to an even better future.
Thank you, John. So we're going to shift a bit again, and the three individuals that you've heard from have already completed sort of nationwide assessments in the countries where they work, and we're going to shift to some of our newer family members. As you heard yesterday, we like to refer to this as a family. And I'm going to move over to Felipe. Felipe has just completed a major pilot in the state of Veracruz in Mexico under what they're calling MIA. And I would love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to take up this type of assessment in a very different context of Mexico. And also, it might be interesting to know kind of how the collection of groups that have come before you have shaped and influenced what you've been able to achieve there.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And yes, Mexico is a middle-income country, 112 million people. And like India, the enrollment in basic education is high. It's almost universal. No? We participate in a lot of evaluation, international evaluation, like PISA, TIMSS, and national evaluation. No? We have a census in all the schools every year. And the question is very pertinent, no? Why to spend time and resources and to make a citizen-led survey? No? Does ASER methodology make sense in the other part of the globe? Literally, the other part. Why Yuba? No? Why Yuba family? And we have three main arguments. But first of all, what is MIA? MIA is independent, is the I of the name, measuring of learning. No? We try to measure learning independent for the government. That's the idea of the Yuba family, and that's the idea of the name. What's the arguments or the problems we have in Mexico? First of all, we have inequalities in education system. No? As India, there is a big collective effort in increase enrollment, but still have problems in quality and equity in educative system. The differences between rural and urban areas, between indigenous and mestizo people, between social classes are huge. And all the educative evaluations, PISA, Pearls, TIMSS, etc., hide these inequalities, not show, no? Hide, and this is a huge problem for us in Mexico. The second problem in Mexico is there are a lot of reforms in the field of education, but all the reforms limit to the teacher incentives or the teacher policies. No? All of them is only if the teacher has a good job or a bad job, if how to entry and exit teachers, incentive systems, and evaluation of the teacher performance and whatever. No? But the other factors like families, parent involvement, social context, doesn't not matter. No? Nobody talks about the importance of the social context, the importance of the parent involvement in Mexico. No? Only is teacher and only teacher. And the third problem in Mexico, we have a lack of participation in education, no? In Mexico, like suppose in India and in other countries, the parent participation is limited to economic cooperation in the schools. No? If you participate, if you cooperate with money to pay the school or to buy something, no? And there is a lot of social energy involved to change the educative system, but nobody knows how do we change the status quo. No, it's a lot of energy, but nobody knows what do I do, etc. ASER methodology and Juba approach is a useful tool for us to try to resolve this problem. In first place, by their focusing in learning and the importance of the data at state and sub-state level. No? For us, it's very important to show the inequalities at local level and state level and at national level. No? Most of the evaluation is only at national level or maybe at the state level, but at sub-state level, you can't find information. No? And this methodology is very important to that. With this tool, you can show the inequalities with evidence and call to action to community and state authorities in order to change the situation. Juba approach is useful to bring back extra scholar factors in the public opinion. No? It's the second good way to Juba approach. No? Because the survey is in household, not in schools, you can know how the children really live if their parents can or not involvement in their development and add more actors than teacher in educative action. For us, this point is key to change the focus on conversation for teacher policies to learning policies. No? And I suppose that MIA and Juba approach make a lot of sense to work in households, is not to work only in schools. No? Education is not only school. And finally, Juba is a very practical thing. No? It's very practical. You have simple and clear methodology. You can something concrete to help, and this is very important to canalize the social energy focusing in learning approach. In this sense, we believe that Juba approach is a kind of substantive social accountability. When the really important is the childhood can read and make basic math, no? More than if the budget to spend in painting the schools, what's spent in this. No? It's more important, the focus is the learning. No? And this Juba is clear in this focus. No? And this is a kind of social control, but a substantive social control. It's like an audit. You can audit the money or audit the result. No? And the important is audit the result. It's really important that the school to be in perfect condition, but it's more important to parent, teacher, and community if their son and daughter can read and learn to be free, in a Marta sense, an Indian sense, no? In their life. In this sense, we consider ASER and Juba family like a major brothers and sisters for us. No? We learn, consult in case of doubt, and are happy if they give support. No? When I wrote a mail and they say, very congratulations, Felipe, you are good. And no, it's to me it's very happy. No? I transform happy day. Luckily, we are far away to receive scolding of my sister too. No? But seriously, we feel that it's a hybrid between the participate in this family. It's a hybrid between Swiss Army knife. Do you know the Swiss Army? No, and safe network. No, like the clowns. No, if we have any question, we are safe that and free to ask. No, and this is very important to learn and to involve. And really, the charm of the exotic idea of the India opened several doors in Mexico. No? When I said, this methodology is from India and from Africa, it's very charmed to talk when I talk with the authorities and, in India, wow, that is, I don't believe it. No? It's very, very important to us, no? Because it it's easier to persuade the involved. No, we have, for example, 400 volunteers. No? To us, it's a huge number, but when I sound that in Pakistan has 10,000 and here 3,000, wow, no, it's a lot of people involvement. Finally, what's next? And we have 3 steps. First, we need to share the information at district level and state level. No? How is the most effective way? We don't know. Sisters, help. What is the more effective system? Second step, how to add the intervention phase in the approach. No? Like yesterday, listened with Tarl approach, we should make more than give bad news. No? It's key to understand the whole process. No? And third step, how do we support the approach in more states is our question. No? Mexico has 32 states, but we are only working 1. No? How to export? And this is our scenario to the few months, but really believe me when I said that we are very proud of MIA and to stay here in the anniversary of ASER India. No? Congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Felipe. And last but definitely not least, our newest family member, Mo, who's been helping to lead plans to undertake a similar type of assessment in Nigeria. Mo, Nigeria is the largest economy of Africa, but also has 1/5 of the world's out-of-school children. So looking ahead, I'd love to hear what some of your hopes and fears are for this type of assessment in Nigeria and how it might be similar or different from some of the other approaches that we've heard about, given the context that you face there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Dana. I think before I sort of respond to your question, I must, when you were speaking, Felipe, and talking about how you very politely ask for information from the other countries, well, we harass them. It's actually borderline harassment right now. And we also make it a point of duty whenever we travel to any of the implementing countries to loot the offices and take everything we can possibly find from there. But I think perhaps I should offer a bit of context in 1 minute. Nigeria is a huge economy and probably generally agreed to be a strategic country in Africa, not least of all because it is the largest country in Africa, the most populous country in Africa. But we face several challenges in the education sector, and these can broadly be grouped into challenges with access, with quality, and with equity. In terms of access, it's no news that Nigeria today is, the country that has the highest number of children who are out of school. And so statistics suggest that 1 out of 5 children that are out of school in the world today is a Nigerian. So every 1 child is a Nigerian. In terms of quality, the sad reality is that even those that do attend school don't learn very much in there. And when we look at the school leaving results that students show, we find that barely 1/3 of children who go to school actually pass examinations that enable them to go further on. And in terms of equity, one only needs to look at the statistics from the northeast of the country, and particularly look at the results that girls from the northeast of the country show to realize that we have major issues. And so in thinking about all of these, a group of people under the auspices of what is known as the Every Nigerian Child Project, of which 3 of us in this room, myself, Gary, and Ife, are steering committee members, decided that we needed to do something. We could not sit down and just watch the country go down the drain. There must be something that we can do. And we decided to establish this network and begin to engage Nigerians in diaspora and Nigerians in Nigeria who were working to improve access and quality and equity, in the country. And we decided to begin to pull together the resources that we needed and bring the people together to begin conversations and to support interventions where possible. And when we started to do that, one of the big realities that hit us was the fact that we have major challenges in the country pertaining to accountability of resources that are spent in the education sector. And over time, we have worked very closely with a number of state governments and also with the federal government. In fact, a few of us have helped to write the current strategic plan that is governing the education sector for the country. And in engaging at this level with policy, we realized that one of the reasons why the country is in the situation that it's in is because we do not have sufficient levels of accountability. And although there have been several initiatives, some of us in this room have heard about Community Accountability and Transparency Initiative, CATI, there have been so many different initiatives. Each of them has fallen flat on their faces. The government has not necessarily become any more accountable to anyone. And so we decided to unpack that a little bit. And what we found was that there is undue emphasis on what we call one aspect of the results chain. So a lot of emphasis on financial sector inputs, how much goes into the sector, but very, very little emphasis on what actually comes out of the sector. So lots and lots of budget meetings end up, with people agreeing how much is going to be allocated to this and that, but nobody's actually asking questions pertaining to, so what bang do we actually get for our buck? And so we realized that that was certainly a challenge, and perhaps one way that we could address that challenge was to begin to refocus people's minds on education outcomes. And what better way to do that than through a citizen-led approach? And so we started to think about, opportunities for us to get involved in the citizen-led movement. We had great discussions with Bookmini, we met Sarah, and we decided, we would take the plunge. I should also mention very briefly that when we were thinking about starting this survey in Nigeria, we realized that education is not serving the purpose for which it's supposed to serve. The question continues to be, we're educating our children, but educating them what exactly? Unemployment is at, youth unemployment is at over 50% in Nigeria today. So even in thinking about planning how we were going to pilot this, we'd already started to think perhaps higher grade assessments are going to be important. We need to test not only foundational skills, but skills at higher levels to find out whether young people are prepared to go on to the next educational level. And we also began to think, what do we do with this data when it emerges? So we began to enter into discussions with organizations that are thinking already about, innovations that could emerge from the information that comes out of this. So in 2013, we were part, again, the ENCP Nigeria was part of a group that basically put together what is known as the Nigeria Economic Summit. And at that summit, which is sort of like the highest platform for public-private engagement in Nigeria, we made a commitment. And that commitment was that we have thought very deeply about citizen-led assessments, and we want to do this. And we announced that to the president, to his cabinet, and to every other person that was in the room. And I think that in terms of, the successes or the hopes that we have, for the initiative, we're very happy with the amount of engagement that we have, both from the public and the private sectors. We're very happy with the amount of support that we have received thus far, even from the public sector, and of course from civil society organizations, from development partners, etc. It's very encouraging to us. We do know that we will continue to face challenges regarding the political will to actually make a difference in the country. And this is why continuing public-private sector engagement is crucial to this particular endeavor in Nigeria. We do know that we have challenges pertaining to security in the country, and these are things that really have scaled out of proportion in the last 1 year. And we also need to think very deeply about what exactly we want to do with this data. We've started those discussions, but what exactly is the importance of the data that is emerging? Are we going to just continue to be a thermostat, or do we actually want to intervene? So these are some of the issues that we're thinking about And we're just thrilled, that we have the opportunity to take learnings from other countries. We feel like we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's just wonderful to be able to engage with the other families. It's exciting that we have the opportunity and the privilege to do this in Nigeria, and we hope, to continue the conversations and indeed to begin the pilot this year. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. So I'm mindful that we have about 6 minutes. So at the risk of putting Savitree's job on the line, maybe we can do one rapid fire round of questions from the audience. So if you can keep it really brief and introduce yourself, and we'll do one rapid fire round, maybe 3 or 4 questions from the audience. Vikrama. And then here. Is there a microphone? Yeah.
My question is, what is the role of these citizen-led assessments now, given that increasingly many states have also started to measure learning in a rigorous way? Is there any way that the results from the citizen-led assessments and the state assessments can collaborate and complement each other in a strong way? So I think we heard a little bit of some thoughts from Felipe on that, and I'd love to hear from some of the others.
Hi, my name is Ambarish. I'm at Accountability Initiative and Center for Policy Research. 2 quick questions. One is, all of us are using household surveys to assess learning outcomes, but some questions are being raised about this method in Indian policy circles. What has been the experience of other countries, and if their questions are being raised, what have been your responses to that question? That's the first question. Secondly, in all the countries that we have results here, the share of the private school is also increasing quite rapidly. But if one looks at the learning outcomes are either stagnant or also going down. But we have not really discussed about what's happening in the private schools. Do we know what's happening in the private schools, and what kind of questions should we raise in that domain? Thank you.
And then one more over here.
Hi, I'm Debanjan Chakravarti. I work for the British Council in India. And my question's related to the gentleman's question just prior to me. What impact, if any, has ASER-type surveys in your countries have had on policy? And what kind of impact has it had on the tenor of public discourse around education?
Great. So maybe, John, do you want to tackle the question of the role of independent versus state assessment? And if there's any other quick comments on the other questions that you start?
Yeah, in East Africa, for instance, we are part of a movement called SACMEC, which basically is the government and UNESCO tool that monitors education quality in East and Southern Africa. When we look at our role, really we remain relevant because first of all, we assess children at the household, and which means if we were to go with measurement only at the school level, then how about the other half that is not in the government school? So we find that even the governments are forced to use our data because they have no data coming from the household. They have no data on those that are not attending school. They have no data on those that are attending private schools and so on. And so, again, as Felipe said, independent verification still remains important. Because if we were all to sit there and rely on the education measurements by the government, we have issues with head teachers doctoring data for their own purposes because capitation is based on school data and so on. And so there is a lot of vested interest in what we can call government data, especially in our African contexts. So we collaborate, and for sure, what the governments are doing and what we are doing can be there in complementary fashion. But then we require also independence for us to move forward. Then a quick comment on the method. Of course, there are those who feel that assessments must be conducted by experts. You cannot use volunteers to measure learning and so on. But then we raise the question: we are measuring learning for what? You know, it's not just for academic purpose for us to make conclusion, but it is actually something that links to action. And the only feasible way, we are sure that government resources will never be enough. We have to expand the space for citizens to participate, not only by being called to action, but also being actors themselves in terms of determining and making decisions.
Thank you. Fatou, I think you spoke a bit already about the policy impact, but anything about the public discourse in Senegal and the impact that Jangandoo has had there?
Yeah, I'm going to just state that one thing very important is to let the government first understand that we're not part of the problem. We're not just delivering bad news. We're part of the solution. This is something we understand at a very early stage, and we engage a very ongoing dialogue with the government. For example, the first results of Jangandoo are shared initially with the government officials. So no result is known by no public. So the first result of Jangandoo are shared initially with the government. So we go to the Ministry of Education with all technical director of different departments of the Ministry of Education, and we share the result and we gather their comments. If there are things to discuss about, we discuss with them. So there is no misunderstanding. So in order to really make impact and have a dialogue and really impact, it is really important for us to have a dialogue with government officials and let them understand that we're part of the solutions.
And finally, Baela, this question of private schools, I thought maybe you would have a perspective on from Pakistan.
Yeah, so much like India, we have 30% enrollment in rural areas for private schools and almost 70% in urban. So it's a reverse situation. And so whilst, it shows similar trends as in India of higher performance by private schools, and even if you control for differences, but lately, because of this presence and because ASER Pakistan also looks at both public and private, as it does for urban and rural, there has been an increasing interest in what is known as the phenomena of low-fee private schools, and looking at them a bit more closely. Even within our program, we have a school assessment for school improvement program, and others have it, who've been digging deeper into the realities of the large mass of private schools, which are essentially low-fee, and that doesn't always mean low quality, but by and large, that's what's emerging as the challenges of low-fee private schools, also of low quality. And so there is a whole movement in Pakistan, because it's now part of the public sector or the public policy discourse, and also actions where the government has openly declared in its sector plans that it will work with low-cost private schools, either through the education foundations, such as through the grant-in-aid system, or through other autonomous bodies, such as we have in Sindh, the Education Fund for Sindh, to support low-cost private schools in what is seen as government effort to reach UPE and beyond, as far as Article 25A or right to education is concerned. But I think also the fact that the government has said openly that it wants to not be seen as the sole provider, it is wanting to see itself more as a financier, facilitator, enabler. Now, I think, but beyond the rhetoric also, what does it really mean is where we are grappling, that is the government going to take on the responsibility of quality in private schools when it doesn't take it in the public school, how it will do so in the private school. And if there are products that are being developed by the government or services to improve quality in public schools, which, by the way, as a result of ASER, whether it's hiring teachers or having more cluster-based teacher educator support schools, so people are saying if you're going to go help public sector schools, why not then also help the low-cost private schools, where the government's open policy is in every policy document at the national or the local level, then those same products and services need to come out to the low-cost private schools as well. So I think there is a kind of a growing conversation and some bit of also collaboration and action by the government and also within the local private school providers on being able to recognize the challenges of quality, and somewhere even some innovative solutions are emerging, whether it's they are technology-led or even they are not technology but more conventional ones. So there is a concern on issues of quality in low-cost private schools, and I think ASER has also been very influential in taking that dialogue further, because we are reporting each year to the private sector space as well. So I think, you know, the dialogue is getting more intense than it was in the past, and each year when we're producing different products, including policy briefs on what's happening on low-cost private schools or in public-private partnerships and so on, as shown in the ASER data, I think it does carry quite a bit of weight. But, you know, we haven't really seen solutions have an impact. But this year, in ASER 2014, we've seen actually learning levels dip. So the concern is, you know, the action is still not where it ought to be. But certainly the conversations seem to be becoming bigger and more influential.
Well, I am sure we could go on with the questions and the responses, but I know that we are short on time, so I'm going to wrap us up here. But I want to thank all of our panelists for such a fascinating swath of experiences from many different places. I was really struck by the fact that some of these core features of the assessment, the simplicity, the fact that it's at the household and therefore captures equity in a way that other assessments do not, and the independent nature of this have been so powerful in galvanizing action, in changing the discourse in a quick period of time. And at the same time struck by sort of the next frontier of challenges that Baela was just raising in terms of stagnant learning levels over time despite more attention to them, and this tension that came up around how to both be an independent critic of the government, but also be supportive in promoting changes that will improve the situation. So I hope we'll be able to pick up on some of those themes as we move to our next panel from some international perspectives. And just wanted to have all of you help me give another round of applause and thanks for our panelists here.